3 true horror stories that happened in American motels. Before you ever check into another roadside motel again, I need you to hear this. Somewhere along America's forgotten highways, hidden behind peeling signs and broken neon lights, are motels that don't exist on any map. They sit quietly in the desert, waiting for travelers desperate enough to stop. They look harmless, ordinary. But the moment you step inside, something feels wrong. The air feels heavier. The silence sounds deeper. These are the places that hold on to people, the ones who never made it to their next destination. Tonight, we're traveling across the United States, revisiting 3 true horror stories that happened inside real American motels. Each one darker than the last. Each one real enough that police still have open files, even if no one dares to talk about them. So before we begin, take a second, make sure you're comfortable, maybe turn off the lights, and if you're watching this alone, keep an eye on your door. And while you can, hit that subscribe button, tap like, and comment below which story you think is the most disturbing. Because by the time we're done here, you'll think twice before booking your next motel stay. Now, let's begin. The vacancy on Route 66. It was the summer of 1993 when Evan Rourke decided to take the long road from Texas to California. He was young, restless, and too broke to afford real hotels. The kind of guy who lived out of his car and paid for coffee with spare change. By the time he reached the Arizona stretch of Route 66, the sun had dropped behind the red hills, and the desert had gone completely still. His gas gauge hovered near empty. No towns for miles. Then, through the rising dust, he saw it, a flicker of red neon through the heat haze. Desert Sun Motel vacancy. It looked abandoned. One side of the sign was broken, half the bulbs dead. Still, desperate for rest, Evan pulled in. The gravel lot crunched beneath his tires, the headlights catching on a row of cracked windows. Inside the lobby, everything was coated in dust. A small brass bell sat on the counter, and beside it, an old ledger filled with guest signatures, dates ranging from the 1950s to 1970s. The air smelled like mildew and something faintly sweet, almost like old perfume. When Evan rang the bell, he heard slow footsteps from the back room. An old man appeared, tall, wiry, wearing a motel uniform that looked decades out of date. His pale blue eyes didn't quite focus on Evan. "Cash only," the man said. His voice was dry and low, as though unused for years. He slid a brass key across the counter, room 6, and muttered, "Don't wander after midnight." The rate on the ledger, $6.66. Evan smirked at the odd number, but the man didn't laugh. That night, he unpacked in the dim yellow glow of a single lamp. The air conditioner rattled. The room smelled faintly of copper. As he tried to sleep, he noticed something strange. The door to room 7 across the hall was sealed with boards, and the words, "Do not enter," had been scrawled across it in faded marker. At exactly 2:17 a.m., Evan woke to a noise, slow, deliberate knocking from the wall behind his bed. He froze, heart hammering. The knocking stopped. Then a faint whisper leaked through the plaster. "Don't stay here, they never left." He bolted upright, grabbed his bag and ran outside, but the air had changed. The neon sign wasn't glowing anymore. The office was dark, the desert utterly silent. 2 days later, his car was found idling on the shoulder of Route 66, door wide open, no sign of him. When police traced the address of Desert Sun Motel, they found nothing, just an empty stretch of desert and a few cracked foundations. County records confirmed the motel had been condemned and demolished in 1979, 14 years before Evan's disappearance. One photograph found in the ruins showed him smiling in front of room 6. But the photo was dated June 12, 1978, 15 years before he ever existed. To this day, truckers swear that on long desert nights, they still see that neon sign faintly glowing through the dust. Vacancy. Room 217. In the spring of 2004, Marissa Clark was driving alone across Nevada. She just finalized her divorce and wanted a clean break, a new start in Reno. After 12 hours behind the wheel, she pulled off the highway near a small town called Millstone. There, sitting under a flickering billboard, was the Silver Rest Motel. It was a single-story strip of faded pink rooms, surrounded by dying cacti and silence. The kind of place you stay when you have no other option. Marissa checked in around 10:15 p.m. The night clerk barely looked up as he handed her the key to room 217. She remembered thinking how strange it was that there were no other cars in the lot, yet every room light seemed to be on. She unpacked, showered, and texted her sister, "Made it to a motel. I'll call in the morning." That was the last anyone heard from her. The next day, her car was still parked outside room 217. The curtains were drawn. The door locked from the inside. When police broke in, they found the room untouched, bed made, TV on static, a glass of water perfectly still on the nightstand. No sign of Marissa. Then came the smell. Behind the wall vent, officers found something wrapped in plastic, a Polaroid photo. It showed room 217 from the exact same angle, but the woman in the picture wasn't Marissa. Her name was Carabelle, a missing person from 1989. She had vanished from the exact same motel. Renovation crews later discovered a narrow crawl space above the ceiling lined with old insulation and a series of small square holes cut into the drywall, holes that perfectly aligned with the vents in every room. Locals said the original owner, a man named Earl Becker, went missing himself in 1991 after the motel closed. No one ever found him. Some believe he watched his guests through those holes. Others think he never left at all. When the Silver Rest was demolished in 2011, construction workers unearthed a rusted metal door buried beneath the foundation. The sheriff ordered it sealed after a thick, sour smell seeped through the hinges. No one ever opened it. Still, every October, truckers along that same highway report seeing a barefoot woman in a white shirt walking the shoulder, head tilted slightly, eyes vacant, as if she's looking for her room. The midnight guest. In 1981, Frank Daly was the night clerk at the Suncrest Lodge, just outside Santa Rosa, New Mexico. The motel sat miles from the main road, forgotten and quiet. On a good night, 2 or 3 travelers might check in. That night, just before midnight, headlights appeared down the empty road. A vintage black sedan rolled silently into the lot and stopped without sound. Frank waited for the door to open, but no one came out for nearly a full minute. Finally, a woman stepped out, dressed in a long gray coat, her face pale against the desert dark. She asked softly for a room. Her voice was calm, polite. He gave her the key to room 9. Later, when he checked the guest ledger, he noticed her signature, Evelyn Monroe. The name looked oddly familiar, and the handwriting, written with a fountain pen, was old-fashioned, elegant. At 3 a.m., Frank glanced at the monitor. Room 9's light was still off. Curious, he walked over to check, but the hallway was freezing cold. When he opened the door, the room was empty. Bed untouched. The key lay neatly on the pillow. Confused, he returned to the office. That's when he found an old framed photo on the wall behind the desk, one he'd never noticed before. The photo showed the motel's original owners, smiling beside a woman. The caption read, "In loving memory of Evelyn Monroe, 1961. Evelyn had been murdered there exactly 20 years earlier, strangled in room 9 by her husband, a traveling salesman." Frank quit the next morning and left the state. He never spoke publicly about what he saw, but years later he mailed the motel's new owners the brass key to room 9 with a note that simply read, "She checked out, but she's still here." The Suncrest Lodge closed a year later after guests repeatedly complained of seeing a woman standing at the foot of their bed, holding a key, whispering for help. The road never ends. Across the endless highways of America, motels dot the horizon like scars, relics of a time when travel was dangerous and cheap beds came with secrets. Some of them never truly shut down. They just wait. 3 stories. 3 places. 3 guests who vanished into the cracks of time. Maybe you think it's coincidence. Maybe it's something worse. Because every one of these locations, Route 66, Nevada, New Mexico, shares one eerie detail. The ledgers from each site list the same handwriting on their final page. The name, Monroe. The last note written, "Room ready. Do not disturb." So if you ever find yourself driving those empty roads at night, and you see that faint glow of a neon sign in the distance, vacancy, maybe just keep driving. Because some rooms don't want new guests. Some rooms remember. And some doors, once closed, never open again. If you made it to the end, you're officially part of the few who can still sleep tonight. Which motel story got under your skin the most? The vacancy on Route 66, Room 217, or the midnight guest? Tell me in the comments. Make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more terrifying true stories every week. And if you ever stop at a roadside motel again, look twice before turning the key. Because some rooms don't just want your money, they want you to stay.